Dirty Birds, what's up? And welcome back to the Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network. I'm your host, Will McFadden. I am joined today by ESPN's national NFL analyst, Ben Solak. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you.
So you are kind of doing, I guess, the rounds this offseason, collecting a lot of information, and you happen to be here in Atlanta on the day that a story publishes on ESPN talking about potential Kirk Cousins trades.
Yeah.
And you had an offer in there. I've got it right here in front of me. The Falcons would get a 2026 sixth-round draft pick, which would potentially become a fifth-rounder with considerations. And the Steelers would be involved in this trade. So Aaron Rodgers not going to Pittsburgh in your scenario.
Yeah.
They would get Cousins and cash consideration. So kind of what is your take on the Falcons situation, and do you still believe that kind of the best interest is for a deal to get worked out?
Yeah, I think you're going to expect the deal to get worked out. It very much seems like Kirk wants to be somewhere else, wants to have a starting opportunity and kind of finish his career in that way. If you're the Falcons, you have this rookie quarterback in Penix. You think he's going to be your future. So you want to have that cap flexibility. Biggest building advantage you can have for a team over the last 10, 15 years is having the rookie contract quarterback. He's so cheap and you're able to pour money elsewhere. In order to get there, you have to get the Kirk contract off of your books, right? It's got to be what comes next. And so I would still expect there to be a move. But whenever we have quarterbacks that are stuck on rosters in June, July, you're kind of always expecting another domino to fall and that to dictate where that quarterback goes. I remember when the Eagles had Sam Bradford and he was just kind of sitting on the team. This was like the Chip Kelly era. Like, we don't know what we're going to do with this guy. And then the Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater gets injured in camp. We're trading Sam Bradford. So you kind of have to wait for something else to give somewhere to open up that opportunity. So will it be Aaron Rodgers not signing with the Steelers in Pittsburgh? Will it be Browns camp and their whole quarterback carousel is a total mess and they clearly need somebody, right? You have to wait for something to occur. So it's probably going to be a waiting game. You don't need to hold your breath. It'll happen when it happens. But I think they're going to get Kirk done. It's just going to depend on what happens with some other franchises to figure out who exactly the partner is and what exactly that trade looks like.
You know, you're so right. And it's funny, we talked about that exact same thing kind of playing out with Albert Breer at the Combine. It just, okay, so let's say it doesn't happen before the draft, then you play into training camp and maybe you're waiting for the leverage to kind of swing back in a different direction. Somebody gets hurt, somebody's underperforming, what have you. But and his point was that does come with some risk, because let's say that other domino doesn't fall and you do go into the season, and as the Falcons have said, Kirk Cousins is your backup. So let's assume that does happen at this point and kind of everything rolls out as it is currently. Do you see any potential positives to that scenario for Atlanta?
A lot of it depends on how Kirk would decide to behave as the backup, right? I think that your expectation for Kirk to get into the building and be a constructive member of the quarterback room right now is pretty low, just because of the way that he's communicated with the team to this point. Does something change by September, October, because he realizes there's not going to be another team? You know, they hear through the league, other acquiring teams are worried about the fact that you haven't played, you haven't put on pads, you haven't practiced, like how rusty you're going to be. So again, other dominoes that might fall. There can, of course, always be a positive to having the young quarterback and then having the mentor QB2. That's a nice construction. Given the unique circumstances of how Penix joined the Falcons and how Kirk lost the starting job, I really just don't expect that relationship to ever blossom here. But you don't know these things, right? I've spoken to Kirk Cousins about his feelings about the situation recently, right? I'm just tea leaves and secondhanding here. And so it can become positive. I don't think you're holding your breath for that, but it can.
I think, and there is a world where Michael Penix Jr. has played 3 games, right? And he gets out there, like, again, that growing that happens during the course of your first full kind of 17-game season, I think is important. So having, again, another figure in the room, and the Falcons have surrounded him with a lot of former quarterbacks, TJ Yates, DJ Williams, Zach Robinson. Like, he's got a great support system, but being able to communicate it directly from a player perspective is unique, right? And then we look on the flip side. Atlanta just drafted 4 defenders. If you have Kirk Cousins out there and he's in practice going up against some of the younger guys, maybe that pays dividends too.
No, I do think that's a big part of it, where your QB2 and your scout team QB, if you have that voice in the room, he can help some of those younger defensive players. It's a very, very good point, right? Like Jesse Bates and Kirk Cousins used to talk all the time in Kirk's first year here, right, in terms of film review and what are you seeing, what are you doing. Kirk's got a lot of football knowledge. You'd love to get that into the building if you can. I think there's probably some bridges to be mended to get there, but you hope to get there.
For sure, yeah. I think about maybe that with like Xavier Watts, Right, kind of same thing, maybe a younger player. But let's actually talk about Atlanta's starting quarterback moving forward. What was your opinion of Michael Penix Jr. coming out of Washington? And then did you see anything in his 3 starts that changed your opinion either for better or worse?
Yeah, so out of Washington, Penix was a very confident thrower of the football. Willing to sit in the pocket, grip in and rip it. He'll be aggressive throwing downfield. He'll attack one-on-ones. He'll make reads, get to the backside. He'll take a hit and still deliver an accurate football. Like, this is an NFL passer. The NFL arm is there. There's no question. The movement skills, I think, drained over the time from Indiana to Washington because of some of the injuries. You saw him mostly want to stay in the pocket at Washington. So that's what you're expecting coming into the league. The first big box to check is, will this confident and aggressive passer wilt in the face of NFL defenses and NFL speed, or is he still going to be able to play that way? And with Penix, it's like a clear yes, right? I mean, he's just ripping throws in the red zone, right? The touchdown to Pitts against Washington. Like, these are high-impact, high-leverage throws. He's giving Drake London and Kyle Pitts chance to make big plays on the ball, those big-bodied receivers. That's maturity. That's NFL decision-making. That's a big deal. The concern out of Washington was some of the accuracy, some of the sprays, some of the big misses. He's playing with 3 NFL wide receivers there, right? Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. That can help a guy look a lot more accurate than he might be because you have that sort of talent at the college level. And I certainly think that you watch that 24 season, there's some great throws, there's some big sprays, there's some big misses. And so what you're hoping is he's got some unique mechanics. Zach Robinson's going to take a look at that. TJ is going to take a look at that. Maybe we make some slight adjustments. You don't want to mess with a guy too much. So maybe we make some mechanical changes. Maybe he gets a little bit more calm in the pocket in year 2. But you're hoping to minimize some of the big misses simply because he's paying you off with a lot of positive plays, but then he's leaving easy yards on the table. He's leaving easy completions on the table because he's taking those big downfield throws, and he's got some of those difficult misses. So that's the developmental arc. We usually say in quarterback development that accuracy isn't something that improves. It's kind of preternatural. But we have a lot of examples over the last 5-6 years of either players getting a lot better at it. You see Josh Allen, or coaching staff's getting so good at figuring out what a guy needs to see that they can color in the margins. Think about Sam Darnold with the Vikings. We're just, Sam's is who he is. Sam's got his warts, Sam's got his issues. But the Vikings found a way to build the whole ship out of what Sam Darnold can do well. Yeah. And so there's reasons for rosy projections on Penix because he has the arm and he has the willingness. If you can build a good offense, you have a great catch radius player in Drake London. You have the tools necessary to build around him, even as he slowly figures out some of the accuracy issues.
I actually want to go back. So accuracy, what was the belief that that's kind of preternatural and not, because I would assume that is something that is more technical, that you could kind of work on and refine and teach.
Yeah. So accuracy is it sounds like it's one trait, but it's really the conglomerate of a lot of things. It's your footwork and your throwing motion, your mechanics, but it's also your timing and how well are you reading the coverages. When we talk about accuracy, we're not always talking about catchable footballs. We're talking about how you place the ball relative to coverage, right? An uncaught football can be very accurate because you threw it away from the defender and just missed, just as a caught football can be very inaccurate because you threw the receiver back into the defender and he paid you off with a great play. Again, talking about a Drake London here, right? That makes those opportunities for you. And so when you think about quarterback development, there's always been a lot of ways to color in the lines, right? Okay, we want him to throw vertical balls, not crossing routes. We want him to throw crossing routes, not vertical balls, right?
Play to his strengths.
Exactly, yeah. So there's ways to get a guy's completion percentage up. But if like Jimmy Garoppolo in the Niners was never good at leading a 9 route down the field, so they just never threw it, right? We're just not going to ask him to do it. You could say you have the one-on-one coverage, you're making the correct read. It's Brandon Ayuk, he's very fast. Just go ahead and throw it. And it just wouldn't be accurate. It's just not a throw that he had in his quiver, right? There's a lot of different throws on a football field, all 3 levels, going vertical, going horizontal, zone, man coverage. Sometimes quarterbacks just don't see it well. And so a big part of coaching your young quarterback is figuring out what throws he has, what throws he doesn't have, what he's seeing on his good throws, what he's not seeing on his good throws, and how to present him with the information he needs. Bryce Young with the Panthers, 23-24, is a big example of this, right? They just started throwing all these isolated 15-yard outbreakers because Bryce is short, he can't see over the middle of the field. But if you just point him to half of the field, he can see it, he can grip it, he can rip it, and all of a sudden the accuracy improves, even though it's just shot selection. It's just where on your course you're taking your shots. And so there's a lot of ways to fudge accuracy. It's generally very difficult to go from I miss a lot of throws to I make a lot of throws. Your one big exception being Josh Allen. And that improvement kind of revolutionized the Bills. Yeah.
Okay. So if you were going to, and maybe this is the wrong way to think about it because maybe as you just explained, like this isn't possible. But if, let's say we take a player like Penix and who is mostly outside of the hashes, kind of go balls deep down the field throws, and you're going to add in year 2, 2 types of throws to his game to make him take a little bit of that next step forward, what would those two throws be?
You really want to get the dig back, right? That was something that you threw a lot with Kirk, the deep stop route, the deep dig, 15-yard in-breaking route. And you see some willingness for Penix to throw it, and you see good throws on it. There's certainly good throws between the hashes.
That's a throw you need, though, in the NFL today,
in
right?
the Zach Robinson offense, too, especially. And the thing about London, who I've talked about London like 9 times here, I love Drake London. He's such a good player. And the discourse around London was very frustrating to me before this 24 season versus now, because London actually is a very good route runner. He's very good in the in-breaking routes. Yeah. He's not snapping guys off like Justin Jefferson is, but he's so big and he's so physical, and he goes and gets every single football. He'll dig it out of the ground. He'll catch it behind him. So you want to give that sort of a receiver those sorts of routes. We talk a lot with those throws about anticipation. And right now, Penix is a little bit more see it, shoot it. And you want him to be able to anticipate it and throw. You throw to a spot in the field. You throw between the two linebackers in front of the safety. It can't always be a laser beam. He likes to throw those howitzers. You want him to throw a little bit more touch, make it a little more catchable of a football. That's a throw that can be improved, though. It's a throw a quarterback can get better at over his time in the NFL as he adjusts to NFL speed and where exactly that route is going to hit. So that's a route that you'd like to get back. You brought up the vertical stuff. You brought up the outbreaking stuff. If I can get a dig, if I can get a deep comeback, I can get a vertical, the last thing I want is to be able to hit the big post. And I do think that in Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod, you have guys who are speed guys, but neither one of those dudes are great on that big post route. And that's kind of a little bit of a question mark. You also talk about the seam and kind of maybe want to get Kyle Pitts more involved there. But I'd like to be able to get Penix to take some more of those trebuchet shots, those big shots, 30-plus, 40-plus yards down the field. Not always outside the numbers. Those are the hardest catches to make. Those are the lowest percentage throws. Yeah. But the ones to the middle of the field after I manipulate that post safety. That's going to require good pass protection. And then it's going to require the receiver who can make those sorts of plays. And in theory, that should be Mooney. And you've seen Mooney do that a couple of times. But a lot more of his success is on the outbreaking stuff. If you can get Mooney to be a little bit more viable there, it's going to be a big part in expanding your offense.
One other player who, been remiss to not even mention until now, but who could also be a factor in this is Bijan Robinson. And, we think back to the Washington game. They had that missed throw where he is running that wheel route kind of down the left side. And then in Carolina, there's a wheel route where he's running down the right boundary, and it's actually kind of a mistake on Bijan's part. He eats up his own cushion, and he doesn't leave Penix any chance to really complete that pass, even though he drops it right where it should be. But that could be another factor. And where do you think Bijan kind of falls in the hierarchy right now of the league's best backs? Because here in Atlanta, obviously, we're like, man, Bijan just can do no wrong. But when you start talking about Saquon Barkley and you start talking about Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs because he's been on a higher profile team over the last couple of years, where do you personally kind of fit Bijan with the Christian McCaffreys and the Derrick Henrys and those guys?
Yeah, so I think if you ask an average NFL fan, best running backs in the league, who would you list? I don't think many would say Bijan Robinson's name. They would say Saquon, and they would say Jahmyr Gibbs. They would say Derrick Henry because of the seasons those players just had. Bijan deserves to be mentioned exactly with those guys. I think Bijan is as likely as any other player in the league to have the most productive running back season this year, period, right? And Saquon, Derrick Henry, they're coming off very high volume seasons, and Bijan was certainly very high volume, but he didn't have the playoff runs and the kind of those additional weeks, and so you expect him to recover a little bit better. He's younger, so you expect him to recover a little bit better. I thought Bijan was a great dark horse pick for Offensive Player of the Year last year. I'll say the exact same thing again this year. It's worth noting that Bijan, from a success rate perspective, so just is the play positive, yes or no? We're not looking at explosive. We're not looking at, just was it a positive play? Did it create expected points out of your team? Bijan and the Falcons' running game last year was historically good, right? They just kept Bijan's ability to turn a 1 yard play into 3 yards and 3 yards into 5 and 5 into 8 is preposterous.
He's the highest floor running back.
He's so good, and Penix will be your big name, and London's going to have the big contract coming, and so you're going to talk about these guys, and it's what we started with. The core of the Falcons' offense is Bijan. He is the engine that makes it go. The first priority the offensive coaching staff is going to have every single Monday when they walk into the room is, okay, how are we getting Bijan's 20-plus touches this week, right? Do we want to be running it this way or that way? Are we involving him in the pass-catching game? Remember when they played Denver, right? And it was Denver's going to be a big blitz team. Well, we're going to involve Bijan in the passing game quick and early and by design, and he pays you off for it. Bijan, from a talent perspective, can have a season just like Saquon just had, like McCaffrey had in 2023. That is 100% within his range of outcomes. He's also, in a little bit of a way, done it in kind of a quieter way, just not as big of a deal. The ceiling is the moon with Bijan. He's an absolute delight.
Yeah, you mentioned it's so interesting because, you talk to anybody, any coach in the building, like they'll say the exact same thing, but they also have a very clear way for him to improve in year 3, and it is those explosives. Because if you look at the number of, I think, 12-plus yard runs on True Media, he's 4th, right behind kind of like all those guys we just mentioned. If you put that up to 20-plus yard runs, he falls to 17th. So we talk about this incredibly high floor, but I think now they're working on, okay, how do we get you those 40-yard runs, those 60-yard runs? His longest run last season was 37 yards, right? And he was also had the highest mile per hour at the line of scrimmage of any player in the league last season. So it's like, you got the acceleration, you got the tools. Now how do we get that last home run ability out of you?
Yeah. So one thing I will say is that outside zone, which the Falcons ran last year more than any team did, and one of the highest rates last few years, is not as good a play for the 80-yard house call as it seems and as you hope it would be. Derrick Henry here being the exception that proves the rule. Derrick Henry would run a lot of outside zone with the Titans and then get in the third level, and then no one's stopping Derrick Henry. Bijan does not have that tool in his toolkit. Nobody has that tool in the toolkit besides Derrick Henry because of the size, because of the speed. But Bijan ran so much outside zone last year, and you're picking your spots and you're flowing through and you're finding little gaps and you're finding alleyways. You're getting to the third level. But because the play works to one side of the field so heavily, the entire defensive flow is there. The backside safety, the corner, they're in pursuit, and you have more guys to solve.
That's a great point.
Yeah, if you go and you watch some of those 20-plus yard runs, you'll certainly see some outside zone, no question. You'll see a lot of plays that happen between the tackles because big explosive runs are the result of good interior blocking that gets a running back to the third level vertically. We don't waste time going horizontal and letting the defense figure out what's happening. No, we're on you quick, right? We're upfield on you now. That's how you get flat-footed safeties. That's how you get corners who are still looking at receivers. And now you can actually get that big explosive run. So Bijan's got to do his work. Put the parachute on, get the speed, whatever. Do the mile per hour work. Absolutely, you want that third level speed. But a lot of getting more explosive Bijan runs, those real 20-plus yard house calls, is going to be on Zach Robinson and on the coaching staff to find more variety in the running game. And I think that's something that they know they want to do. I think that because of Kirk's athletic limitations last year, they had to be a little specific in their running game and under center, pistol, the dropbacks. How are we going to run the football? So I think with Penix, you're going to see that blossom. You're going to see the diversity in the running game widen. And I promise you'll see a couple of Bijan house calls. They'll be there.
That is something, actually, you mentioned pistol. I'm curious to see how much that remains in the offense, too, because we can see Michael Penix obviously has more of the athleticism to do those play-action boots and rollouts and things like that. But you go back a couple of years ago, the Rams were one of the highest pistol teams in the league. The Falcons were one of the highest pistols under Arthur Smith as well. So it's like, is that just a staple of the offense, or was that the nature of the quarterback that he had in place last year? Something I'm just curious to see as the season unfolds. But let's flip over and talk defense, because that's really been the story for Atlanta this offseason. What do you think of the reunion with Jeff Ulbrich and Raheem Morris kind of coming together before this season?
Yeah, Raheem at this point doesn't have DNA as a defensive play caller, right? They do so much stuff, and he's under Dan Quinn, then he's Sean McVay. He's running the Brandon Staley stuff and the 2 high, 1 high, defensive structure. Is extremely variegated. He's got a lot of different pages in the playbook. And so you bring in a Jeff Ulbrich guy, okay, it's a Robert Saleh disciple, and, it's going to be all this 4-3, and we kind of, it's going to be cover 3 to quarters, and we kind of know the DNA of this team. I think you're going to continue to see hodgepodge stuff. They do a lot of work here to make sure that they acquire smart players on defense. You talk about Jesse Bates, you talk about A.J. Terrell, you talk about what Caden Ellis has been at linebacker for this team. You had a player now in Jalon Walker, who's a notoriously versatile guy who can eat a lot of the playbook. So there's going to be weeks that they just look like the Jeff Ulbrich team you might expect the Jeff Ulbrich defense to look like. It's going to look like the Jets. It's going to be 4 down, and we're all getting upfield, and this is pretty. You know what you're getting. We're just really good at it. And then there's going to be weeks where they're highly versatile. There's going to be weeks where on first and second down they look very vanilla. Then on third down, it's the Raheem Morris blitz package stuff that he popularized with the Rams. And so I trust Raheem as a defensive coach. Just period. I trust his ability to maximize his players and get them in the right spots. They were right to pour resources into the defense and to add more players and to try to plug some of those gaps so as to be a more productive pass rush, kind of have a better coverage, a good safety running mate to Jesse Bates, stuff like that. And so they're adding more tools to the toolbox, but I trust Raw from an X's and O perspective every time.
I'm really curious to get your thoughts on this question. I was trying to think of, a good one to throw at you. And given the Falcons kind of ping-ponging back and forth between defensive coordinators over the last 4 or 5 years,
right,
by nature of that, the guys they've drafted and kind of the guys they brought in free agency, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of different attributes and different body types and things like that. So as you're going about building a hybrid style defense, as the Falcons say they want to deploy, do you think the best version of that is a defense filled with jack of all trade, hybrid, versatile types of players, or a defense that contains players who may fill single roles, but you have the ability to go to the best version of multiple different looks because you may have one guy who's a great nose tackle for that 3-4, one guy who's a good base end for that 4-3. They can't do both, but like you can deploy the lines as you need them.
Yeah, so you always hear defensive coordinators talk about being multiple, right? It's their favorite word. And the dirty little secret about being multiple is that in that second scenario you bring up, where I have a really good nose tackle for my odd fronts and I have a really good base end for my even fronts, is that I'm the offensive coordinator in the opposing box, and I just have a guy watching who you're putting in, right? Here comes the nose tackle. I know what you're in. Here comes the base end. I know what you're in, right? Your ability to disguise what you want to do is limited by the fact that you have role players, right? And I know what the role players want to do. So now I can call expecting the pitch I'm going to get from you, as opposed to in a truly versatile defense. There are 11 players on the field, and we can do just about anything we want with them, right? We have a guy in Jalon Walker who you don't know if he's going to stack or if he's going to come on the line of scrimmage. We have a safety in Jesse Bates who, if we put him in the deep middle, you're scared of him, and if we put him in the box, you're scared of him, and he can do everything in between. We have a player in A.J. Terrell who can travel with your wide receiver one, or we can zone him off, and we feel comfortable doing that. True versatility means you get a highly versatile guy, and then you get a second one, and then you get a third one, and then you get a fourth one. Because if you have 10 role players and one versatile dude, he can't be versatile. He's got to fill the 11th role, right? He's limited by
the defined by the nature of the other 10.
Yeah, and this is something that I think Raheem knows very well. Like, again, Raheem was with Dan Quinn, who was very, here are our roles, and then he was in Los Angeles with the Rams, and it was very, okay, we have a lot of guys who can do a lot of different stuff. And I think you see them swinging towards the second thing, and that's the correct way to swing. Now, there's problems with that, right? Which is, if you're going to have a whole menu, sometimes you're going to call something bad off the menu, right? You go to a restaurant you've never been before, there's 4 pages in that menu, you might not order what actually was going to be your favorite thing on that menu, right? As opposed to if you have a call sheet this big, I'm getting the burger. The burger's going to be good, right? And so it is an admirable pursuit, and it can be very good for you long term, right? Your defensive ceiling to be highly multiple. It usually takes years to build that, and you can run into some problems with it, right? You get to an offense that's so good at getting heavy and running the football, and you just don't have the solutions for it, right? You have all these jack of all trades guys. You just don't have a dude who can just plug, right? Like that 2-gap and nose tackle. So it's not perfect, but defense never is. In general, though, the way they're building it by adding more and more versatile players is the way you want to go about it.
So you keep mentioning Jalon Walker as kind of that example of versatility, and rightfully so. The Falcons have said they plan to use him in more of a specific, narrow-defined edge rusher role in year one. A, do you believe them in that? Yeah. B, is that the right way that you would approach this?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. And then I would see what he can do, right? You want him to be an edge. He's built more like an edge than he's built like a linebacker. You have a bigger needed edge than you have at linebacker. But this last year, Caden Ellis had 75 tackles and 5 sacks. He was the only player in football who did this, right? They had a player who they said, okay, he's a stack linebacker for us, but on every third down, we're going to get him up on line of scrimmage. We're going to loop him. We're going to stunt him. We're going to crash him. We're going to blitz him from depth. We're going to build our blitz packages around the fact that this is a unique player. So then they draft the guy Jalon Walker. They say, oh, we're going to play him at edge all the time. No, you're not. Like you'd be foolish to, and you're not foolish, right? So you give him the edge playbook. You see how he does during OTAs. You see how he does during training camp. You find a way to get him on the field. You get him his pass rush impact. That's where you need the most help. But you're never going to let a player like that play 95% of the snaps just off of one edge. It just doesn't make sense for who he is. They're going to walk out on third down in week 1, and he's going to be standing up in the A gap, right? And you can do that with other guys who are definitely true edges who have never played linebacker before, but you specifically want to do it with a player in Jalon Walker. So, again, they're saying absolutely that's what you say, right? But there's no way this staff drafts that player and just lines him up at defensive end. It's not going to happen.
Well, and that's what, when you mention Raheem doesn't have a DNA, it's you can see the elements of Brian Flores and you can see the elements of Vic Fangio. Like it's such an interesting kind of collision of a lot of the very common, I think, styles of defense in today's NFL. What are your thoughts on the other pass rusher, James Pearce Jr., that the Falcons drafted in the first round?
Yeah, I did not think that we were going to see a big trade up for James Pearce Jr. in the first round. That was a big surprise to me. And the 23 season for Pearce Jr. obviously described the ceiling. I think in 2024 with the Volunteers, you saw what some of the floor can look like, what some of the warts can look like. There was a big discussion in the pre-draft process about Pearce Jr. in terms of how interested is he in football. What's the hustle like? What's the effort like? those conversations happen with every single player, right? You're checking your notes on that. And if you feel good about it as a team, you pull the trigger, and if you don't, then you don't. The Falcons clearly feel good about it, and so we have our guy in the building. We have a good room around him. We have good coaches. Like, the Falcons are a young and a very firebrandy sort of a coaching staff. We think we're going to be able to get this guy's head where we want it to be. If you get the good James Pearce Jr., you have a guy who can create a pressure in under 2.5 seconds. One of the most valuable things that a defense can have in football is a guy who wins, but doesn't just win, he wins quick, right? He's able to immediately create pressure. You only get one read as a quarterback, as opposed to guys who have to go through you and pass rush moves, and it takes a little bit longer. So if you get the good James Pearce Jr., it makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate the urgency with which they approached. We got to get sacks, man. Like, we've now gotten sacks in a decade.
2 off seasons. They were like, we need a quarterback. 2 of them. We need pass rushers. 2 of them.
Yeah, we got to get some sacks in the building. So I appreciate the urgency. I'm very curious to see what Pearce Jr. looks like as a pro, because there's a wide range of opinions on him from the league in the pre-draft process, and depending on what film you put on from his Volunteers Day, you can get a wide range of opinions on him as a player, just plain and simple. And so I was surprised to see it. I didn't have it on my bingo card, but it's happened. The Falcons have been very willing to be aggressive in the draft, as we well know, and we'll see where the chips fall. Yeah,
one other note on that was really fascinating talking to Raheem Morris on Monday. He mentioned kind of just some mentorships as they start to develop over, naturally at this time, but they're pairing him with A.J. Terrell. And he said that was something he identified. He was here, obviously, when AJ was drafted in 2020, and as was I, and he was kind of a serious rookie. That first introductory press conference we did, it was like, this feels like a guy who just played Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in the national championship 3 months ago. And James Pearce is kind of the same way. Serious, kind of quiet, goes about his business, that kind of demeanor. So I thought it was interesting that Raheem identified that and kind of like paired them together to try to, get that connection going. 2 more for you. What is kind of your thought on Atlanta in the NFC South and in the NFC landscape at large?
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers are going to be very, 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 very good. Buccaneers are returning 11 out of 11 starters on offense, right? Liam Cohn leaves, who's their previous offensive coordinator. Josh Grizzard takes over. And if Josh Grizzard's got 3 brain cells to rub together, which it seems like he does, then the plan for Buccaneers offense is pretty simple. Like, what works with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving. Like, that group is still together. They're still strong. They added to it in the first round. That offense was the top 10 offense by pretty much every metric you look at last year. I expect them to be so again. Defensively, it was one of the worst Todd Bowles defenses we've ever seen, right? And they dealt with a ton of injuries in the back 7, and they're different alignments of guys every single week, and they were playing a very high-risk, high-reward style of defense because they knew they didn't have the coverage players. I do not think Todd Bowles, who's got a long history of being a solid defensive coach, I do not think Todd Bowles is going to let that defense fall like that again, right? They might get the bad injury luck again, but they added a lot of defensive backs in the draft. They're getting Servassier Dennis back. They added Hassan Reddick off the edge. Like, they put the pieces out there where I think the floor of that defense is going to rise. I think it's going to be better than it was. So we're talking about a top 10 offense with an average to above average defense. That's usually how contenders are built. If you can get both top 10, you're lucky. But generally in the NFL, we talk about top 10 offense and then a defense that's passable. So I think the Buccaneers are going to be very good. Atlanta should be there in that wild card route, pursuit, right? They very much can challenge the Buccaneers. They can beat them on any given Sunday. But I more so expect them to be in that wild card route, in that, trying to push above 500, trying to get one of those 3 remaining spots. I would not be surprised if Carolina is also there as well. I have a lot of lingering doubts about Bryce Young, and I want to see it for another season, but they added just so many people because they had picks and they had so much money. So that defense is going to improve a ton, and they got Bryce more weapons there. Second year with Dave Canales, I think they're going to take a step. And so I would expect Atlanta to be fighting along with Carolina in that NFC South for that second spot, trying to put pressure on the Bucs there at the top of the division and fighting for one of the wild card positions. It's year 3 now for Raheem. Right?
Year 2.
It's year 2 for Raheem. It's year 5 for Terry, right? And so,
yes.
Yeah. So if you're, Falcons haven't been in the playoffs since 2016, right?
17, right?
Yep. So it's been 8 years. So if you're Terry, you would really like to be able to get one of those spots. This is a big season for the team that you've built, right? You've made the top 10 picks. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. Like this offense is the offense that you brought together. So it's an important year.
Yeah, they've been right there knocking on the door every single year, which honestly is only kind of. It's almost been like worse, right? Like sometimes taking that full step back to then take that step forward, people see the build and they kind of the year over year improvement, but to be right there at kind of 8-9,
Yep.
9-8. Like it's tough, but again, kind of credit to they are firing everything they can to solve the problems they have. So last one is a little bit more league-wide for you. What kind of scheme trends are you anticipating us seeing this fall? We kind of saw the proliferation of cover 4 last year. We saw some of the orbit cheat motion kind of the year before with the Dolphins. Like anything fun that you're really looking forward to?
I think it's always cyclical. I think last year was a big return to the running game, and I think you're going to see more running game. Last year was a big return to under center. I think you're going to see more under center. Defenses are light. They're thin. They're built to stop the pass. Let's just get heavy and running at these guys, right? And the Falcons, going back to the Arthur Smith days, have been wanting to be on that precipice, right? And being able to just hand the football off. And like I said, the Falcons were a great handoff team last year. I think that's a very good sign for their future. And so I think you're going to still see the heavier personnel start to be the move, and the pendulum start to swing back, and we're going to run the ball more, get under center, and not need to be as pass-oriented, right? What was the big panic and freak out in the first 2 weeks last season? It was all the passing numbers are down, football's ruined, too high's ruining football. Well, the reason for that is because the running game is just really good now, right? Because of the way that the defenses have adjusted. So to me, like that's going to be what you continue to see. I think the first month of the season, training camps, you're not getting nearly as much practice as you used to. Guys aren't ready for football in the same way. So if you can just be big and outrun a guy for 4 quarters, you can just win those early games because you control the ball, you control possessions, you don't turn the football over. So to me, it's all running game. That's where I expect the league to go next few years.
Gotcha. I lied. I got one more for
That's
you
right.
Because I played rugby in college, so I'm a big advocate of. I think more teams should lateral the ball down the field. Yeah. I think there should be a play after a play.
I thought this was going to be tush push.
No. I'm going to different because I think the tush push, we're thinking back. I'm trying to think ahead. I'm thinking of the future. Ben Johnson, like Mike King, because of all the cool stuff they're doing. Do you think we'll ever next season? Do you expect to see maybe an expansion on some of the stuff we have seen over the last couple of years with the Chiefs, with the Lions? Some of this we're getting a little risky and loose with the football, but it's paying off for us, and we're going to continue to try to do that. Yeah,
I wouldn't expect to see expansion in the sense of we're lateraling in more places, doing it in more ways. I definitely think that like the Amon-Ra St. Brown to Jahmyr Gibbs lateral that they scored on against the Cardinals, right? Where it's just so crazy. It's just a curl route, backs out of the backfield to the flat. We just toss to him, he wins to the corner. Like teams are going to that's an easy copy paste, right? And the way a lot of this stuff works is by copy paste. And so I think you'll see more teams be willing to do the simple lateral stuff. I don't know how much more aggressive, like the Lions, the Chiefs, obviously with Kelsey do it a bunch, will get in like lateraling in specific spots. You really, 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 really have to trust the guy who catches the ball in the lateral. You have to know, right? And that's Kelsey has earned that over a decade there with the Chiefs. Saint has earned that. Saint's a very cerebral player, is a very hardworking player. Like Saint has earned that for the Lions. But in general, you got to be careful, right? You can't show up and be like, all right, this is in our playbook. Who's our toss guy, right? No, you need to know for sure that player is worthy of being the toss guy. And so I think that's probably the limiting factor on that sort of a play.
I disagree. Let's throw the football backwards. Let's lateral all day long. That's what I'm going to keep pushing for because it's just more fun that way.
Yeah.
But Ben, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody, please go check out his awesome work at ESPN and continue to support the show here. But we will see you guys next time.